Video games are often turned to as a safe haven. You know, a little tool for escapism every now and then. But what happens when these games go against the grain of your classic big box store release, and instead lead us to explore the dark, often less spoken about corners of what humanity's actually capable of? Well, are you ever in luck? Because that's what we're going to be looking into today. In my hands right now, I've got some of the most controversial video games to ever grace consoles and PCs. These controversies range from light and funny mishaps that are rated E for everyone, to some more AO rated controversies that are so bad even just having these games in your possession could be a criminal offense in some countries. So whatever you're doing, stop it right now. Pull up a seat, get your cream corn, get your glass of milk, and let's dive into the weird world of video game controversies. But we're not just gonna dive into like the most utterly unspeakable, vile, disgusting controversies off the bat. So, you know, don't worry about that. As the video goes on, these entries will get, you know, a lot worse. Like, a lot. So make sure you watch the whole way through. But with all that being said, strap in, because we're starting off this video with one of the most interesting controversies to ever happen in the world of gaming. The recall of Mario Party 8. Okay, so come on. Go ahead and name one thing better than getting together with all your friends and family and having a Monopoly level breakdown, eventually leading to everyone leaving at the end of the night extremely upset and disappointed with each other because Darren got a star when I should have been the one who got the star because I deserved it and he didn't grind like I did. Sorry about that. Anyways, I mean, things could be worse. This option could be taken away from us, you know, entirely. And that modern horror did become a reality. I mean, that's exactly what happened to Mario Party 8 enthusiasts in the United Kingdom. Upon the release of Mario Party on July 13th, 2007, Mario Party was immediately recalled. In a press release, Nintendo gave a very vague statement saying that a small number of games contained the wrong version of the disc. But that was just a blatant fucking lie to try and get these games back without the real issue coming to surface. However, a European retailer confirmed that the game was actually withdrawn from shelves due to an offensive slur being used as a part of a magic spell cast by the Magic Koopa. In the board, Shy Guy's Perplex Express, where the Magic Koopa says, "Turn the train redacted," because the word spastic has a highly negative connotation in the UK. This game was declared banned and immediately recalled. Mario Party 8 was then eventually re-released on August 3rd, 2007, with the offensive statement altered. European copies use the word erratic instead of spastic, and American copies use a completely different statement entirely. Oh baby, is this next entry a good one? Hatred. If being a nihilistic Reddit atheist came to video game form, it would have to be the game Hatred. Hatred was released June 1st, 2015. Maybe 2015 was a different time, I don't know, but the entire concept of this game just seems so surface level. Like, I could go on my Twitter and see all this nihilism and hatred for free. I just don't get it. But anyways, the game sees you playing as a 2000s pop punk lead singer with a simple hatred for everything in the world. The main objective being to run around town and kill as many civilians and police officers as possible. Not with any real story or like deeper purpose. Hatred was posted to Steam's Greenlight service, where users could vote for it to come to the store or not. But due to some internal error, was quickly removed due to its extreme levels of violence, and only days later was quickly reinstated to the service. The controversy surrounding this post and delete had garnered a lot of attention, and this game actually went on to become the most voted game on the Greenlight service. And I mean, I guess it's cool if some people like the game. I read into some reviews and I sort of agree with a lot of the critics, whereas if you remove the edgy, ultra-violent layer, there's just nothing of substance at all. Just a shitty, boring game where you play as a dude who straightens his hair. But forget Hatred, we have Postal. In 1997, Postal was released. Although there are 4 games in the series, all outside of one definitely give off heavy Duke Nukem Saints Row vibes, whereas Postal 1 is arguably one of the most controversial games of all time. The gameplay has that same nihilistic Reddit atheist feel to it, but not in a corny, I'm going to straighten my hair and cry way. Sort of in like a way that's actually haunting. The story takes us inside the mind of Postal Duke, a fellow with a gun who has just been evicted, is absolutely broke, and is about to go postal. With the thought stuck in his head that the government is trying to poison him somehow. So the player, as Postal Guy, decides to go on an absolute tear and slaughter everyone in sight. This game sees you completing the same run and gun gameplay that Hatred has, but Postal was released in 1997, so I don't know, maybe it doesn't feel quite as serious and horrific as the idea actually is. To progress through the game, you are tasked with killing alleged hostiles, but you definitely have the option, and in my opinion, you're encouraged to take down harmless civilians who cross your path. As you progress through the levels, you'll be met with journal entries or quotes from the mind of Postal Dude, which although you can hardly fucking read because you're trying to decipher which pixel belongs to what word, some of them are actually quite ghastly. But while the game looks like hot ass, it's kind of funny in its own unique way. Throughout your journey to destroy all life surrounding you, the game ultimately leads you to the final stage, the elementary school. But upon going there and taking out the weapons in Postal Dude's arsenal, you'll be relieved to notice that they don't have any effect on anyone in the nearby premise. Despite Postal Dude's best efforts to let it sing, the player eventually collapses. But regardless of whether or not the bullets did damage, this was obviously controversial enough to land the development team of Postal in hot water, as many publications didn't bother to actually look into the level but instead slammed the game immediately for its representation. Which, I mean, come on, that's pretty fair. If you make a game level like this, what else would you expect? Following the events of the last level, the game ends with your character collapsing in a rather blunt and, I don't know, downright shitty ending. The entirety of the events get blamed on the modern world's demands, causing Postal Dude's mental illness, with the character ending up in an asylum. And that's it. No plot twists, no it was all a dream type of thing. No details showing the horrors of what toll these actions actually caused on the world, nor was there really any more substance outside of a mental illness plot, layered with constant messages sort of glorifying the rampage. I figured I'd put Postal and Hatred side by side on the shelf, because if you haven't caught on by now, Hatred is simply just a remake of Postal. I don't have a problem with violence in video games at all, but when presented like this, it just leaves the player feeling confused and dirty. Manhunt was released on November 19th, 2003. Out the gate, this game received negative feedback from pretty much every angle, as it was told to be one of the most gruesome and deplorable video games available at the time. It even went as far as being banned from sale in Australia, but I feel like that's not really a big deal because it seems like everything gets banned in Australia. But anyways, former Rockstar employee Jeff Williams had even gone on to speak about the atmosphere that the game created in Rockstar's development studio, saying that the dev team was on edge and generally uncomfortable while undergoing production due to the extreme level of violence in the game. And it's always funny to see the impact these games had on the general public at the time of their release. Because, like, I get it, although the game definitely has some overtly wicked violence taking place, with, you know, current day graphics, it's just hard to acknowledge this as offensive when it looks like a modern day Android app. But this uncomfortable environment should have been the least of Rockstar North's worries, as on July 28th, 2004, this game was linked to the murder of 14-year-old Stefan Pakira by his 17-year-old friend, Warren LeBlanc. Initially, media had reported that the police found a copy of the game in the murderer's bedroom. As well, the mother of the victim stated that she believed to have heard friends of her son's saying that the murderer had been obsessed with this game prior to the incident. Warren had lured 14-year-old Stefan to a park in the local area with the idea in Stefan's mind that these two friends were going to be meeting up with a couple of girls to hang out with. However, that clearly wasn't the case. Upon arrival, Warren struck Stefan over the head from behind with a claw hammer. This specific style of attack had drawn a striking resemblance to the unforgiving nature of Manhunt. Stefan's father, Patrick, added that the way Warren committed the murder, this is how the game is set out, killing people using weapons like hammers and knives. At the time this incident took place, it perfectly aligned with the video game Rebellion. Therefore, the media coverage led to the game being removed from the shelves by vendors themselves, as well as some countries around the world just looking to outright ban the game. The Pakira family decided to sue Sony and Rockstar to the tune of £50 million in a wrongful death claim. However, on the same day that the family hired their attorney, the police officially denied any link between the game and the murder, citing drug-related robbery as the motive, and revealing that the game had actually been found in the victim's bedroom after all, not the murderer. So, following this discovery, the lawsuit was dropped. 3 years after this, Rockstar went on to release a sequel to the game, denying that Manhunt should have to bear any responsibility for the gruesome murder of Stefan Pekira. Grand Theft Auto Hot Coffee mod. While GTA has faced its fair share of controversy over the years, the Hot Coffee mod might have been the closest to seeing this game taken off shelves permanently that the franchise has ever experienced. San Andreas has to be the most defining game in the franchise, and while it simply was just controversial on the surface, what actually landed this game in so much hot water was the discovery buried inside the game's codebase. The Hot Coffee minigame can only be accessed through modding the game itself and not in the original gameplay. However, when modded, the Hot Coffee minigame allows you to just beat the cheeks clean off your girlfriend in an extremely weird and animated way, putting you, the player, in the driver's seat of CJ's hog, allowing you to control his movements. Before development concluded, the team at Rockstar had obviously been aware that including something of this nature would end up with the game getting an AO rating, which would essentially put the brakes on sales worldwide, at worst leading the game to be banned in several countries. To quickly remedy this situation, the minigame was hidden instead of being stripped entirely, as this was just a band-aid on the situation that held for a long time, until data miners finally got a hold of the game after it was released for the PS2, and found what was thought to be sexually explicit content in the game. At its first discovery, modders found several character animation with explicit file names that were pretty self-explanatory. Shortly after this, following the release of San Andreas to Windows, the content was confirmed, and a modder had released a patch that allowed players to access this minigame. And this mod went on to be downloaded 1 million times in the span of just 4 weeks, which in turn caused everything that Rockstar had set out to avoid. The ESRB re-evaluated San Andreas to an AO rating, and as a result, retailers such as Walmart, Target, Best Buy announced that they would immediately cease all sale of San Andreas for as long as it was rated AO. Because of this, Rockstar put out a public recall of all copies of San Andreas and released a new version that had blocked all access to this content within the game. Taking these extra measures, Rockstar and the ESRB were able to get the rating back down to mature. So, San Andreas was able to find itself back on store shelves once again. The Super Seducer series. Okay, so imagine a scenario where we took every single one of those NPC guys that just, I don't know, somehow keep seemingly spawning from Andrew Tate's massive wagon. We lock them all in a room with a PC and we tell them, you guys can't come out until you have built a fully functional video game. Well, the result would the result would 100% be the Super Seducer series. This is essentially just a point-and-click game targeted directly at incels. I guess it's supposed to teach you how to date?
I'm really into video games, like there's one I play called Fortnite.
But a free alternative would, just be go outside, touch grass, maybe talk to someone that you're attracted to. However, while the creator of this game, Richard, talks about the game being a fantastic learning tool while still being fun, he anticipates the people who purchase this game to not only want his dating advice, but he also hopes that some men out there might buy it because it looks funny. Which, I mean, he's right. He's entirely correct. Although this game was met with a ton of negative criticism, it almost feels like Richard himself, at some point along the way, picked up on how funny the internet actually found his game.
Do you know a good masturbation location around here? No?
And was able to use it to his advantage. But in my personal experience of observing the game,
Look over there, is that a fox in those trees?
What do you mean? What? Don't touch me!
all I felt was a fire fueled by anxiety that regardless of which selection I chose, I was going to end up on some sort of registry or at the bare minimum, somebody's watch list. However, not taking this game as lightly, in a more literal sense, the game has come under fire for the allegations of normalizing toxic behavior towards women.
You like nuts, you said?
But the real uproar surrounding this game didn't really come until the third entry of the series, when Richard and the squad pressed for a release on Steam, which led to Valve making the decision to outright ban the release of Super Seducer 3. Despite the many attempts at finding a middle ground, it seems that Super Seducer 3 was unable to censor its more explicit scenes, and Valve declared their decision final. But that one's weird, so let's get on to Shadow Man: The Second Coming. Shadow Man: The Second Coming is an action-adventure game that was published by Acclaim Entertainment. released in 2002 for the PS2. This game and the original were both well liked by fans, pretty much receiving 7s across the board. I mean, really, in the PlayStation 2 era, what more could you ask for than this? But it wasn't really the game itself that drew this controversy. It was the publishing studio's bright idea for their advertising campaign. And I've read about this several times now. It just gets worse every time. Acclaim Entertainment drew wild controversy when they released their advertising plans for Shadow Man 2 that would see Acclaim advertising the game on small billboards attached to real-life tombstones. But don't worry, it's fine. The publisher said that they would pay the deceased families, and they also said that the poorer families would probably be more interested than others. But it's ideas such as these that are probably why in 2004, Acclaim Entertainment filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So if you ever want to advertise on their grave, I'm sure the CEO would especially be interested, seeing as this company is fucking dead. VTech Rampage. Outside of genuinely just being a dogshit developer, Ryan Lambert is also willing to rob any grave to garner the tiniest crumb of clout. This is a brutal game that was released only a few weeks after the awful Virginia Tech incident, one of the biggest mass murders in American history. This flash-based game puts you in the role of the shooter and allows you to reenact the situation entirely. This game, it's simply just a case of a horrible situation being capitalized by an even shittier person. The game doesn't have redeeming qualities. But I mean, is that surprising, being developed by a guy who looks like all the worst qualities of 4chan and Reddit took human form? Ryan's incredible career even extended itself a step further, when the same dev went on to create a similar game based on the Sandy Hook tragedy. Anyways, let's move on. World of Warcraft. When you hear the term gaming addiction, what comes to your mind? For me personally, it's that one video where the mom is coming absolutely unglued at her kid because he won't stop playing Mafia 3.
Get up and go to the bathroom.
Not yet. What the heck?
Go to the bathroom. You're shitting yourself.
Not yet.
Okay, anyways, to me, it's always been a funny idea. But in the early 2000s, the cultivation of these insane addictions was sort of just coming to fruition. And where else other than World of Warcraft would be the perfect place to explore this phenomenon? With WoW dominating pop culture and exploding in popularity, many diehard fans fell victim to the idea of creating a second life online. But while cultivating this second life online, many users neglect the only real life that they have, and in turn lose their lives after binging this game for hours and hours. There are multiple cases and controversies that have sparked research into World of Warcraft's addictive nature, such as the man who collapsed in an unnamed internet cafe in Shanghai during a marathon session, which, like, I don't know. I played a lot of video games, and if I had to choose a game to be addicted to, but I mean, whatever, this hasn't stopped blatantly unfit parents like the one who played a 15-hour session of World of Warcraft, locked away from her infant daughter in another room, allowing it to starve to death while her husband had been away for 9 days. With incidents such as these coming at a consistent pace since the release of World of Warcraft, it's ultimately reflected poorly on the game, seeing WoW itself having the finger pointed at it after these different variants of controversy arise over the years. I'll make this next one quick because it still kind of stings. Probably one of the more normal controversies in gaming was the release of Cyberpunk 2077. Nearly a decade of hype building up to what was supposed to be the biggest video game of all time. So what went wrong? Well, to find that out, we're gonna have to go back in time. In 2012, when Cyberpunk was announced, it was shaped up to be this immersive experience taking place in a sci-fi universe. Since that day, fans had experienced trailers that made the game look breathtaking. Celebrity endorsements from the likes of Keanu Reeves and Grimes. I mean, even at one point, A$AP Rocky stood behind what was supposed to be the most anticipated title of the century. So did the Cyberpunk regime fall at the hands of its own hype? Going into the release date with hope and promise that Cyberpunk would shape the next generation of video games to come for the next several years. However, I mean, I think that we all know at this point that it missed the mark, leading to such things as confirmed refunds on consoles and PCs, Microsoft and Sony both releasing statements of their own saying that they'd be refunding the vast majority of customers, and even removing the game from the online store until further notice. Since that bugged out release on December 10th, 2020, the game has come a long way. I'm not trying to take that away from anyone. Many fans have been able to play it in an enjoyable way. However, for me, it just left a sour taste in my mouth, and it left a permanent stain on the reputation of CD Projekt Red forever. Mortal Kombat and the Night Trap controversy. So let's get into it. The king of all controversial games, Mortal Kombat. The series has been controversial for as long as I can remember, but specifically the fatalities featured in the 1992 game caused an uproar. Well, it became an almost instant cult classic. As much love as it got for its cutting-edge graphics at the time, it was met with, equally as much disapproval just from the overall general public. That led Mortal Kombat to becoming the most polarizing game in North America, sparking moral panic across the nation. Much like Doom, the narrative was still that video games were poisoning our youth and encouraging violence among the general public. As a result of this controversy, it sparked a congressional hearing, which led to the creation of the ESRB, which can be found on the bottom of every video game case. Well, Mortal Kombat and Night Trap. Night Trap was a game that was released in 1992 for the Sega CD. Much less of a game and, sort of like more of an interactive movie. You know those like Netflix choose your own adventure things that nobody ever clicks on? It's basically just one of those, but you had to actually leave your house, go to a store, and buy it. Night Trap tasked the player with observing teenage girls having a sleepover? Okay. Well, this alone is it's weird. It's weird. It sort of has a redeeming quality, as the player is supposed to watch surveillance Five Nights at Freddy's style and trigger traps to capture anyone endangering the girls. Which is weird because, in my opinion, if we should be worried about anyone in this scenario, it's probably the person watching teenage girls at a sleepover through the cameras. But anyways, in that congressional video game hearing, it was both Mortal Kombat and Night Trap that really caused the whole thing. But as weird as Night Trap is, it actually was wrongly portrayed during this big video game violence panic. The original alleged claim was that this game revolved around violence and kidnapping of teenage girls, when you as the player are actually tasked with protecting them. But the premise of the game is, it's hardly redeeming in itself, so I don't know if this matters much, but anyways, you get the point. Now we have ratings on video game boxes, thanks a lot. But now, it's time to go down to Bonetown. The objective of Bonetown is essentially the same as GTA's Hot Coffee mod. D-Dub Software's very own game puts you in the driver's seat to control different dudes' meat and try to get laid in the most offensive ways possible. When you first start the game, you're limited to solely overweight women that are so desperate for some of that Bonetown pipe that they will stop everything they're doing to get their rocks off with animated hunks that look on par with Leisure Suit Larry, leaving the slimmer women to be unlocked in some fashion, such as beating up people who are harassing the women or completing goals for other racist and stereotypical portrayals of people. Above all the deep-rooted issues with the game itself, it just sucks. I feel like that's one common theme that we continuously come back to. It's almost like the low IQ mouth breathers behind this game also lack funding. And where you lack funding, you lack overall talent, probably because building these games was a bad idea to begin with. RLay. Let's make this one quick because it's honestly disgusting. RLay is a game that was released on April 26, 2006 in Japan. The game puts you in the mind of a sex offender with a history of previous arrests, stalking a mother and her two daughters with an intention of completing an action that I don't really think needs explaining. Completing the tasks at hand leads you to, I guess, completing the game, and that unlocks free play mode. However, while this game has been deplorable and disgusting since the day of its conception, the game didn't really garner much attention until 2009, 3 years after its initial release, as it began appearing on Amazon.com.
Hell yes.
Despite not being officially distributed nor supported outside of Japan. That caught enough people's attention to have this game subsequently removed off of Amazon, as well as drive mass attention that led to the banning and conversation surrounding stronger restrictions placed on video games. I mean, you think it would end there, but it didn't at all. This game instead had quite a few people standing up for its restriction, stating that since rape is a lesser crime than murder, and we allow video games to take place where the protagonist murders their enemies, then why can't our protagonists sexually assault minors, who by the way are 12 and 17. I don't care what excuse or label anyone wants to try and put in front of this game. If you're writing articles or you're publicly defending its existence, there's one reason, and it's because you're the problem. Although this list is in no specific order, RLay and this game are just obviously the two worst entries on this list. Ethnic cleansing. The name of this shitty game is pretty much all you need to know. Unsurprisingly, it was created by the white supremacist group National Alliance as a promotion promotional piece for their organization. This game was never sold on digital platforms. I think it goes without saying that this game obviously wasn't on the shelves at Walmart either. Streaming platforms have outright banned the game from being streamed, and there's not a single chance of it generating a dollar from any viable digital platform. It's said to be the most politically incorrect game that has ever been made. But in 2003, a sequel to this game was somehow released, as if the first one drew such a crowd it needed another. That's enough for me, I'm done. I gotta go take a shower after digging all of these up, and like always, thank you again for watching, I really appreciate it.